So today we are going to discuss about part 4.2 of arrays, array access, bounds and multidimensional array. So array access in Java uses the syntax array index, which within brackets index, which returns the element at that position. For an array of size n, the valid indices range from 0 to 0, 0 to n-1. There is no index n, and Java also does not allow negative indices. If your code tries to access an index outside the valid range, Java throws an array index out of bounds exception. This is runtime exception, meaning the compiler will not detect it. The program compiles successfully but fails when it runs and attempts the invalid access. One of the most common mistakes occurs in array loops when called by the off by one error. For example, writing a loop condition like I less than equals array.length, it may cause a problem. It will cause a problem. When I becomes equal to arr.length, the program tries to access add then within bracket arr.length, which does not exist. For an array of 3 elements, the valid indices are 0, 1 and 2, but 3 is invalid. Right, so to avoid this array, the loop condition must be I less than arr.length, okay, not less than equal to, okay. I less than arr.length is the right loop condition. This ensures the loop stops before reaching the invalid index. This loop boundary rule is frequently tested in Java certification exams. So next is arr.length field. It's a field, not a method. So this is a classic OCA exam trap and easy concept to score points on if you remember the differences. There are 3 ways to get the number of elements or characters, and each uses a different syntax. For arrays, you use arr.length without parentheses. The length is a public final field of the array object, not a method. Adding parentheses like arr.length parenthesis will cause a compile time error. For strings, use string str.length parenthesis with parenthesis. Here the length is a method, it's not a public final field. It's a method defined in the string class. If you write str.length without parenthesis, it will also result in compile time error. For array list, if you use list.size, not length, and size with parenthesis. It uses a different name, size, instead of length. Writing list.length parenthesis or list.length without parenthesis will produce a compile time error because it is expecting a size. In exam questions, these 3 are often mixed together so to test your understanding. Okay, the key rule to remember is arrays use a field, while string which is a length, and while string and array list use methods. You have to remember that. That's a key rule. Also, array list uses size instead of length bracket. 2D arrays, declaration and access. A 2D array in Java essentially is an array of arrays. For example, int bracket grid equal to new int 3 4 within bracket creates a structure with 3 rows where each row is an array containing 4 integers. You can think of it as like a table or spreadsheet with rows and columns. To access elements in a 2D arrow, you use 2 indices, grid, row and then column, right? The first index selects the row and the second selects the column. For example, if you write grid 0 0, it refers to the top left element, while grid 2 3 refers to the bottom right element in a 3.4 grid. Understanding the length of each dimension is important, very important. The expression matrix.length returns the number of rows because the outer array stores the rows. To find the number of columns, you must access one of the row arrays first. For example, matrix0.length returns the number of columns in the first row. This 2-step approach is necessary because each row is itself an array. In many exam questions, what you will find, you will be asked to determine the number of rows and columns using these expressions. Remember that matrix.length is rows and matrix row.length is columns. So jagged arrays, rows with different lengths. So Java, it supports jagged arrays, which are 2D arrays where each row can contain a different number of columns, right? So normally what we see that 3 rows, 3 columns, right? But it can also be like 3 rows, 1 row has 2 columns, 1 row has 1 column, like that. So this differs from many languages where multidimensional arrays must have the same column size in every row. To create a jagged array, you specify the first dimension rows, but leave the second dimension unspecified. For example, you write that int bracket jagged is equal to new int within bracket 3, then within bracket nothing. Okay, so this creates an array with 3 rows, but the column sizes are not yet defined. You then initialize each row separately by assigning a new array to it, such as jagged 0 equal to new int 2 or jagged 1 is equal to new int 5. Right? In exam questions, it is important to remember that the first dimension must always be specified when using new. When writing new int bracket without any size there, it will cause a compile time error, because Java must know how many rows to allocate. However, new int3 then bracket is first bracket 3 and the second within the next bracket nothing is perfectly valid since it defines the number of rows while leaving the column sizes flexible. The same concept applies to 3D arrays also. For example, object 3 brackets then cube is is equal to new object, first one having 3 then 0 then 5 is valid, and even Java even allows array dimensions of size 0. Okay, so how to iterate a 2D array? So iterating through a 2D array typically requires nested loops. The outer loop processes the rows while the inner loop processes the columns within each row. For example, the outer loop variable usually represents the row index and the inner loop variable represents the column index. Each iteration of the outer loop selects a row and the inner loop then moves through all the elements in that row. Java also allows iteration using enhanced for loops. In this approach, the outer loop variable is declared as int bracket row because each element of the outer row is itself an array of integers. The inner loop then iterates through the individual int values inside that row. This style is often cleaner and more readable than index-based loops. In exam questions, you may see nested enhanced for loops on 2D arrays and be asked to determine what the program prints. Now let's come to the practice question. So we have int bracket arr new int 3 then bracket then int 0 new int 1 2 array 1 add 1 arr 1 is equal to new int then 3 4 5 arr 2 is equal to new int 6 system out.println arr.length system out.println arr1.length and system out.println arr1 and 2. So what's the answer, right? So answer is 335a. So arr.length is equal to 3. So there are 3 rows, right? Then arr1.length is equal to 3 again because row 1 has how many elements? 3 elements, 3, 4 and 5. And arr2, 1 and 2, right? That's the fifth element, that is equal to 5. So that is the third element of row 1. Basically row 1's third element is equal to 5, right? So that is the answer then, 3, 3 and 5, answer A. So if you want to practice more questions like this, you can go to https://javalearnclustermicro.com. You'll find 29 full-length practice tests there and 69 24 practice questions with very detailed explanations there. Thanks for your time.